This is the vocal mixer. I came up with this over the years. You know, singing is such a big thing, and you can think about it a million different ways. And I just had over the years this thinking of what's the easiest way to think about voice for someone who's just starting off to kind of think about what even to think about, you know? And that's where all of these dials and buttons came from. These are the primary things I build into everybody's voice. And once they learn how to master these things, then they have a lot of control of their voice. So that's really what this chart is about. And it works for every style of singing. We're going to get more and more in depth with this chart, breaking down each dial, troubleshooting, giving you exercises, things like that. But this is just an overview. You're going to hear me make some weird sounds and swing some dials a bit, okay? So let's get right to it. First dial in the top left corner is the vocal fold closure dial. Your vocal folds are open when you breathe, and they close when you make sound, okay? How much they close affects what kind of sound you make. If I close them all the way, it's a very brassy, clean sound. Ah. If I open them, yeah, I never knew. See, it's like husky. It's got that airflowy sound. Now I've got that bright, ringy sound in my voice. And it's a spectrum thing. You can be in the middle, yeah, a little bit brassy and a little bit breathy. Okay, so that's vocal fold closure. Huge variable in your singing, and you want to learn to control that dial, okay? Compression. This is one of our things that we learn to control with our voice that add grit to our singing, or don't add grit if we have it off. Grit is that bluesy grit, rock and roll. It's that sound we all love, right, when we hear pop singing. What this dial does is it gets you to narrow the pharynx, which is the hole above the larynx, and you're just squeezing it a bit, which creates a pressure sound buildup at the cinching, and it makes your voice have a little edginess on it. So, yeah, that's compression. I'm squeezing larynx, right? Oh, now I don't have any compression. Now I'm having more, yeah, now. Yeah, now I went into growl a little bit there at the end. But compression is just that squeeze. Yeah, I'm squeezing, but my voice is not tight. I'm just squeezing inside. Okay, that's compression. Articulation, depending on what style of music you're singing, you're going to articulate those consonants more than others. If I sang Les Mis, there, out in the darkness, hear all those consonants? If I sing pop stuff, I never knew that everything. It's kind of mumbly. I never knew that everything. I didn't do that, right? That would be the extreme, okay? So depending on what style of singing you're doing, you're gonna have this dial set somewhere, either over here or here, okay? Vibrato. Full vibrato means vibrato all the time. That's that wiggling up and down sound you hear in singing. Some enchanted evening. Opera, musical theater, classical musical theater has lots of vibrato. Clean, if we have straight tone over here, that's a lot of pop and rock. I never knew that ever. See, I'm just straight tone, right? So that's the vibrato dial. Next we have vocal fry. If you have clean onset, then you're not hearing this creaky door sound. Listen, that's vocal fry. And it's an effect used in singing. It's usually used in pop singing, but if I'm in theater sound, like some enchanted evening. I didn't fry there. Some sounds kind of weird in that style. But over here, I never knew that ever. That's a song by The Fray, Cable Car. I'm just creaky door, okay? Very common there. Some singers use a little bit of it, a phrase here and there, they're frying, okay? That's why it's on a spectrum here. That's why it's on a dial. All right, next one we have is larynx position. If you're over here all the way to the left, that's neutral larynx position, and that's like opera. That means the larynx just stays in one spot pretty much the whole time. My larynx is staying down. Okay? when we sing movable larynx position, yeah, my larynx is going, it's shifting high for high notes and goes down for low notes. That's movable larynx position. You want to understand those two sides of that dial to really fully master your voice, all right? So that is larynx position. If we look at mix here, this has to do with the thickenedness over here or thinness over here of the vocal sound. Check this out. Yeah. So I went from a thickened, louder sound, and then I gradually let go of the thickenedness, and then it became more thin. This is controlling your thyroarytenoid muscle and your cricothyroid muscle. They're two muscles that interact with each other to create this coordination, all right? And it's when you're thickened, you're in your thyroarytenoid posture, and as you let go of it, the cricothyroid takes over more, and it's in this gradual transfer of control that you have the brassy or the fluty ooh in your voice, okay? That's the mix dial. We'll get into that a lot more. And next up we have vowels. Tall vowels over here are like opera. Ah, some enchanted evening, some. Turn it over here. Some enchanted evening when you see a stranger. Whatever the words are. I think I messed up the words there. Stranger, and I'm stranger, there it is on the tall side. So I'm exaggerating the concept a bit, but you get the idea. Classical singing, the vowels are more covered. Contemporary, they're more lateral. Next up, let's get into the buttons. We've got two sections of buttons. We have the ornamentation buttons, and we have the upper register buttons. And the way that I like to think about these is, there are certain songs that are one of those. Is this one of those kinds of songs that is more crooning? Or is this one of those kinds of songs that's more pop riffing style? And let me explain what that means. In crooning is like, if you think about throwback jazz, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Dean Martin, that kind. I've got you. They slide into notes and out of notes. They backbeat. There are certain stylistic things that make up crooning jazz. That's what that button is about. But if you listen to pop singing, listen to Justin Timberlake, you know, it's very angular, the way he moves between notes. It's not slides like in crooning and jazz. And in pop riffing, there's the pentatonic scale that's used. There's a lot of things that go with that button setting, okay? But is it one of those kinds of songs that does that? Does pop or more of the crooning? Next up, growl or false vocal fold vibration. What I'm talking about there is, yeah, that sound. Ah, like heavy metal, even bluesy rock. It's, you know, or funk is going to use that button a lot. You're vibrating other stuff in the throat, the false vocal folds, the top of the arytenoids. You're vibrating other things in your throat than the vocal folds to get that button happening. And is this one of those kind of songs? Nasal. You promised me this, you promised me that. Like theatrical sounds, you know. What was I doing? I was doing some Adelaide from Guys and Dolls, I think. Yeah, there are some times where nasality is going to be appropriate. Character voices for musical theater, certain times in jazz. You're going to use nasal. French, obviously. Okay, so nasal is an option with the voice. Then we have to look at high notes. What kind of song is this? Is this a song that uses passaggio high notes for men? That would be fa, fo, fi, the high notes go up and over. They go into that other gear. Compared to if we do rock and roll. Yeah, ah. See, that's a contemporary way to approach high notes compared to that's a more classical way, right? So what kind of song is it? Is it more of those or those? It's usually not the same. They usually don't do both of these in the same song, okay? Or is this a falsetto? I'm 15 for a moment. Do we do high notes more falsetto? Sometimes songs are this and this. You know, it's got belted high notes and some falsetto. That's not uncommon. But that's just an introduction to get your mind thinking that way, okay? Next up, we have female high notes. Is this a song that uses more operatic, classical, oh, when you go high, you go into that voice? Some musical theater is belty on the bottom and operatic on the top, okay? Next button here, we have upper belt. Is this like a Broadway belt song or a straight up pop song that when you go high, yeah, you're hitting into that real power high belt, Celine Dion, Idina Menzel type high note? Is it like that kind of, is it a song like one of those? Or is it more of a song that does mixing where when they go up to high notes, it's a blend of the chest voice and the head voice? Which one is it? Because it could be more belted and thickened or a little thinner. That's this mix dial, right? So which kind of high note is it? Now, that being said, I have to say, many times a song that's mixy is going to also be, a song that's belty is going to also be mixy. It's not, there are songs that are just belting. But usually a song that when a female sings that has belting, it also has mixing high notes in it as well, okay? But you just have to think about what kind of song is this? Is this a song that I use more of those types of button settings, those types of dial settings, or is it one that uses these ones? And that's what this is about, is to get you thinking very logically about what does this song require of my vocal coordination, and how would I set it up on this vocal mixer? Okay, so there's your introduction. Let's get now into the dials even deeper.